So as I was saying, imparfait is only one verb. You take off the ONS from the new form, you add AIS, AAS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, I'm sorry, IONS, IEZ, AIENT for the EO plural form. There's only one irregular, and that is être. Its root is it. For passé composé, we know that we have two verbs per blank or per subject. We need to know if it's avoir or être. You can first start with according to the song. If it's not in the être song, then it must be with avoir. And then also remembering that all of your reflexives go with être. So I wanted to do one example of that before we move through. And that is, let's try all that again. Let's do se lever. Okay, to get up out of bed. So when you do se, any of these verbs like that, you have to make sure that your pronoun matches along with your subject. So je, the se becomes me. In the passé composé, I have my form of être plus my past participle. So there's the two verbs, but you have to remember this pronoun first. So je me suis levé, past participle. Because I'm using être, I have to then think about having agreement. In this case, an extra e if it's a feminine person speaking as je. Your tu, your me will become te, so tu te. Your être form is et, as usual, and lever as well. Again, thinking about agreement, you could have an extra e here possibly. For il, it would be se, apostrophe because a starts with a vowel. Lever, or elle, s'est levé with an extra e because I'm talking about elle. When I do this for nous, my pronoun is nous again, so nous. Some, lever with a possible extra e, for sure an s. Vous, vous êtes, levé, potentially with an extra e, potentially with an extra s, depending on singular plural formality and also gender of the person or persons that you're talking to. And then finally, il or elle se sont levés with an extra e if you've got elle, and for sure an extra s because it's plural. So don't forget that that's how those work. The one exception to the whole agreement thing is you will get no agreement if you have a communication verb. So something like se dire, s'écrire, se téléphoner. And you should go back into your book to find out what are the other ones that do not get agreement. And this is really because se parler is another good one. Because when you do these communications, when you say, or when you write, or when you call, or when you speak, you're speaking to another person. When you have that, automatically that makes that indirect. Therefore, when you have indirect object before, you do not have agreement. Okay. The only other place where you might have agreement is if you have avoir, but you have a direct object pronoun. So let's say that my verb, let's say that my verb was regarder. In the passé composé, I have j'ai regardé. Regardé. Let's say, though, that I had some object after it, like la fille. Okay? I figure out what I'm replacing that with a pronoun, and this one happens to be la, and I put it into my sentence before my first verb. So now it's je, la plus a becomes les. Je l'ai regardé. Now I get an extra e here. Actually, let's do it in yellow. Because my, come on, oh my gosh, driving me crazy. Because my la here is standing in for a feminine thing. So sometimes that will happen, so you just need to watch out for that. That's only with direct object pronouns with avoir. So agreement happens when you have être, you make it agree with the subject. When you have avoir, you make it agree with the direct object pronoun. Those are only le, la, les, and L apostrophe in my triangle, as well, and those are the most common, as well as me, te, nous, vous, and ce, I guess I should have had up there. Only when these are direct, because remember, some of them can be indirect. Okay, so the other important thing on this exercise is that you need to know what's the difference between passé composé and imparfait in terms of when to use what. So let's talk about that. So passé composé versus imparfait. Your passé composé is for defined start, stop actions. So we generally tend to say blank, 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 blanked in English. Like I walked, I looked, I parked my car. And there's, of course, irregulars. I went to campus. I bought a coffee. I ran to class. But the idea is that these actions are started and stopped, and you can count how many times you've done them. Oh, I went to New York 3 times. I walked to campus, but obviously have only happened once. Whereas the imparfait, it can oftentimes be a repeated or habitual action, or it's been done so many times that you can't count it anymore. Like, oh yeah, when I was young, I went to New York every summer. So that every summer word leads you to understand that it was repeated. Every summer, it doesn't count how many summers in that sentence right there. So that would be something that's non-countable. Or when I was young, I used to ride the bus. Used to blank. Or this can be done as setting. It was blanking. So setting or background information, like it was raining, the clouds were coming in quickly, I was walking to campus, and then all of a sudden you'll jump over into passé composé land with a defined start-stop action in your story. So oftentimes we start off a paragraph with imparfait, and then it starts to get into passé composé after, because then you're talking about the prime action or the important parts of the story that you're trying to retell. There's also a number of words that can help you identify which side to be on. So imparfait would be words that are related to repetition, or words that are about sort of floppy time periods, like when I was young. So words like d'habitude, habitually, or en général, or anytime that you have like a repeated day of the week. So like le lundi. The le here signifies that it was happening every Monday. I know that's weird that it's singular, but the le before a day of the week or something like that refers to the fact that it's multiple. Whereas on the other side, you would have something like suddenly, soudain, or tout à coup, which also means suddenly. You would have just lundi. Or you might have ce lundi, which is just the one Monday, Monday or this Monday. It's not the same as le lundi, which is multiple. So I would go back into your chapter and find out there's a chart for which kind of words should lead you to what. So after you have maybe attempted to do this exercise on your own, you can, pause the video, try it on your own, and then go back in. I will go through these and just note, which ones are passé composé, which ones are imparfait. Then you can pause again the video, and then you can go back and try to conjugate them correctly. After which I will do it myself as well, so you can check your answers. So, trying this exercise right here. Pause the video now. And here we go. Let's figure out passé composé for each. Quand je blank with jeune, with être. Être tends to be one of 5 verbs that generally is imparfait because it relates to states of being or states of emotion, which are kind of background information. They're background information to the scene that's happening. So imparfait generally goes with être. Also, here I'm trying to talk about the state of being young. So therefore, that's not a specific start, end, action, or time. So this one's going to be imparfait. Mes parents blank with vouloir que je devienne docteur ou avocat. Your parents wanting. Did they want just the one time? Or did they want over a long period of time while you were young? They wanted over a long period of time that you be a doctor or a lawyer. So this one also is going to be imparfait. Tous les étés, nous with prendre des vacances à New York. Tous les étés means every summer. So this is a repetitive, habitual action. This should also be imparfait. Tous les ans, on with visiter des musées. Tous les ans, every year, also imparfait. On blank des spectacles, we with watched shows. Still, it's going to be tous les ans, so that's still, the imparfait is still over this whole sentence here. Et je with aimer tout ça, I liked all that. Every year you did it, you liked it as a sort of a general vibe, right? Like it's not a start-stop action. So that one also is going to be imparfait. Une fois, le 10 juin 2010, one time, the 10th of June on 2010. How many times does the 10th of June of 2010 happen? Just once. So, here we go, starting to get into our storyline where passé composé is going to make a bigger appearance. So, were we trying to say we were eating in a restaurant très chic? Or are we trying to say we ate in a restaurant very chic? I would say that probably we want to do this in passé composé. We ate in a restaurant. Start, stop, action. Soudain. Passé composé, suddenly. I understood that I will be a chef cuisinier when I'm older. Also passé composé. In this case, the comprendre means you suddenly learned it. You suddenly figured it out. Ce soir-là, that night. How many nights does that happen? Just the once. Nous with commander. We all ordered something different. So this should also be passé composé. Et mes parents blank with essayer plusieurs vins. They tried many wines. Still passé composé because it's just that one night. My mother discutait la carte de dessert quand tout à coup je blank 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 blank. She was discussing the dessert menu when all of a sudden, so this tout à coup refers to this next blank, so this one should be passé composé. This action, all of a sudden I saw the chef approach directly to our table. That interrupts your mother talking about the desserts. So therefore, this first one is imparfait. It gets interrupted by the passé composé. She was doing this when all of a sudden this other thing happened. On would parler de son restaurant pendant plusieurs minutes. Pendant plusieurs minutes, for several minutes. So is this going to be passé composé or is it going to be imparfait? It's going to be imparfait because it's a amount of time that isn't specific. Although, on a parlé de son restaurant. I would also consider putting this in passé composé because you're only talking the one time. So in fact, here I would actually accept both. Puis, une grande surprise, a surprise. How many times does that happen? Probably just once. The inviting especially only happens once. He's inviting me to come into the kitchen. So, passé composé. Je would ouvrir grand les yeux. I opened my eyes big. How many times does it happen? Just once, so passé composé. Je blank l'invitation, to accept. Did she accept the invitation over some sort of long period of time? Was that background information? No, that's an action, passé composé. 3 ans plus tard, je travaille avec lui. 3 years later, I work with this person. So go ahead, now understanding which ones are imparfait and passé composé, take a moment to pause the video, try to conjugate them on your own, and actually I won't do them here. There is a key attached to your review material, so you have that information. The next one is using a lot of the futur simple. So here's the deal. You may have some present in there as well. You have a dialogue or a paragraph, and you have to figure out which tense are you using in the blank. Are you using futur simple or are you using present? So our futur simple, first of all, as a reminder, way up here, has one verb. Come on. Has one verb. It's mostly based off of our infinitives. Parler plus A-I-A-S-A, O-N-S-E-Z, O-N-T. Remember that is an O-N-T, it's not an E-N-T. Keeping that in mind, there are also some irregulars, of course. So you'll need to go back and make sure that you have those memorized. This futur simple, let's see, tense gets used. Let's put this down here. In a couple of ways. And you need to know which ones to use and when so that you can appropriately do this exercise. So when you... struggles. This is what happens when you lose your Apple Pencil. And all of a sudden nothing works well anymore. Okay, so the futur simple is used with certain words. Quand, which means when. You'll get another subject and you'll get a verb here and then a comma and another subject and another verb. They do not have to be the same subject, but they can be. When this will happen, this other thing will happen. So these are both using futur in both slots. That's the same thing with lorsque, which also means when, with dès que, and aussitôt que, which both mean as soon as. They'll have a subject, a future verb, a comma, and another subject and a future verb. You can commute these, but I will show you that this part, the first part, the part that's attached to the quand, or the dès que, or the aussitôt que, etc., gets flipped around and it stays as a block. So let's say my sentence was, when I will finish the exam, We will party. Feront. Oops. Okay. So we see feront here, and we see terminerai here. So both of these are future tenses. Now, if I want to flip it around, my quand je terminerai l'examen, everything before the comma, we'll switch to the other side, and that's fine. So we will party, feront la fête, and then your quand goes in here. Quand je terminerai l'examen. Okay? So the quand je terminerai l'examen is attached. Oops. Wrong one. The terminer l'examen is attached to quand, and it goes to the right. So when you do commute them, you have to just be careful of that. Then, slightly differently, you have your si clauses. Si je termine l'examen à 15 heures. So if I finish it, this one is the present tense. If I finish at 3 o'clock, j'étudierai, I will study pour la géologie. I'll study for geology. Like, imagine that you've got your exam at 2 o'clock and you've got a geology exam at 4. So obviously if you finish early at 3 o'clock, then you'd have time to study for geology. But if you don't, then you won't be able to study more for geology. So here we've got present, then leads you to futur. Okay? Si plus present leads you to future. So this is a little bit different, but when you commute it as well, if I do this, then I'll do that other thing. But the si is attached to the present tense. That's very, very important. Si plus present is a block. So if I turn it around, j'étudierai pour la géologie. Si, now it goes in the middle of my sentence, je termine à 15 heures. Again, my si is attached to my present, je termine, even though I've put j'étudierai, the future, at the beginning. So when you go through this exercise, oops. All right. So when you go through this exercise, you have to decide which thing you're using. Are you using present or using future? So you'll find the keyword quand, lorsque, dès que, aussitôt que, or si, and try to essentially fit those puzzle pieces together. So let's look at the first one. Blah, 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 blah. Si je parle français, si je parle le français couramment, je vais pouvoir trouver un emploi. I have si, and I know that si has to be attached to present. Is this true? Yes, it works out. So then my next subject and verb has to be what? If si plus present brings you future, this one has to be future. And then I would conjugate pouvoir in future. Next one. Après 2 ans, si on blank la bonne qualité de mon travail, on voudra augmenter mon salaire. All right. I have si. I found my keyword si. I've got a subject. I've got a verb here. What tense must this be if it's attached to si? It must be present. La bonne qualité, and I'll check it. On voudra. There's my future. Si plus present is future. course, if you're using a different vocabulary word, you just do the same thing, but find it. So next one. Lorsque tes camarades recevront un diplôme en français, ils blank with préféré. Lorsque is my keyword. Recevront is future. What gets attached to lorsque? It's both future on both sides. So this one's future, and this one should be future. Try doing the other two on your own. Pause the video, do the other two, and then go back and conjugate. So to do the last two, hopefully you figured out what your keyword was. Your second to last blank is aussitôt que, plus some sort of a verb here, plus je and future. So what is aussitôt plus a blank? Aussitôt needs to be attached to future, and it gets future on the other side of it. So devenir should be future. Arriver, and this last one, en plus, je ne blank pas à trouver un travail comme professeur si le marché du travail dans ce secteur ne s'améliore. This is my verb over here. What's attached to si over to the right is always present. Therefore, this one also needs to be future. Make sure that you're watching this. Si and going to the right is going to get you your present tense. It's not going to be to the left. It's always to the right. It's after it, even if you commute them. All right, our last exercise is pronouns. Répondez aux questions avec un pronom direct ou indirect, or it could be your stress pronouns. So all of your pronouns are fair game here. What you need to do in this first section is first, just answer the question like you would a question personnelle, right? Like if the question is to, and you notice that this is present tense, just first answer it that way. And then we'll go back and we'll do number 2, which is looking at pronouns. Once you put in pronouns, then you're going to watch for vowels, and you're going to want to watch also for agreement if necessary. Okay? So first, take a minute to just answer the question before you create pronouns. You can pause the video if you'd like. All right, just answering the questions here. Est-ce que tu réfléchis à ta conférence? And the answer will be with oui, because it says so. Tu becomes je. Réfléchis, this is how many verbs? Just the one verb. It's the present. It's a regular IR verb. So I'm going to do that. Tu réfléchis becomes je réfléchis with an IS as well. A, ta will change a little bit. It will have to become ma conférence. Je réfléchis à ma conférence. Don't put pronouns in yet. Just wait. Number 2, est-ce qu'il veut du gâteau? Break it down, find your subject, il. How do you respond to an il question? With an il answer. What verb tense do you have here? I've got one verb. This is present tense. So I'm going to reuse it. Il veut, copy, paste down, du gâteau. Yes, he wants some cake. Next one. Est-ce que tu as vu les oiseaux dans l'arbre? Tu gets responded with je. A vu is 2 verbs. It's avoir plus a past participle. Therefore, we have passé composé. Je with a and vu. I realize that normally I'd put these two together because of vowels, but we're not there yet. Les oiseaux gets taken down. Same thing with dans l'arbre. Next, est-ce que nous allons rendre visite à Simone? Nous, are we going to do this? Yes. We, or it could be vous. Could be nous or it could be vous. In this case, are we doing this? It's probably answered with yes. We are going to do this. So nous, and then you have 2 verbs. Visite is not a verb, actually it's a noun here. Aller plus an infinitive verb here, that's futur proche. Nous allons rendre visite, copy paste, à Simone. Est-ce que tu as les clés? Do you have the keys? Tu gets responded with je. A is a single verb, it's present tense, therefore single verb present tense. Copy down les clés, which is keys. This one I will have to watch out, that is ne pas. Okay, you should be able to do any of these with ne pas, but of course this one you can see if that's what they want. So once you've done that, then you want to figure out which pronoun you're supposed to do. So, of course, it's going to be the underlined thing. So, à ma conférence, du gâteau, les oiseaux and dans l'arbre is two different ones. À Simone, les clés. Okay? So, in terms of our pronouns, here we go. I have my triangle. I have me, te, actually, could have ce in there now. Now nous, vous, and ce. Then the next column is le, la, les, or L apostrophe. Then lui, leur, and then I and en. Let's break through these. All right. I'm going to give a big blue. So what is direct and what is indirect? If something is direct, it means there's no preposition before it. No à or de or pour, avec, à côté de, etc. Me, te, ce, nous, vous, and ce. These can all be direct. I could say something like, I love you. I don't love at or to or from you. I just love you. So therefore, any of these in the first column can be direct. They all stand for people in the first, second person. Ce is one exception, and there you're only going to use it with the reflexives, so you'll see that as being clear to you. Le d'aller stands in for it or them. This can be people, it can be objects, and it can be concepts. That's a light bulb. These are always direct as well. Lui and leur stands for a plus a person and a plus people, so that's definitely not direct. I stands in for a converging preposition like à and à côté de, sur, sous, so that's not direct because it has a preposition. And en is similar in that it has some form of de, which is a preposition. So the first two columns are the only ones that will ever be direct. The second column is always direct. Okay, in terms of indirect now, indirect means it does have a preposition. It has an à or a de or a pour, à côté de, à gauche de, avec. Me, te, ce, nous, vous, ce can indeed be standing in for direct. If I wanted to say, I am giving the keys to you, I would still replace it to you with te. It's just that it's, in this case now, it's indirect. In the case of the indirectness here, it always is using a. There's no other preposition that it would use. Le, la, les will never be indirect. Lui and leur are always indirect because they stand for a plus a person and a plus people. So this is always indirect. They're always third person though. One person, multiple people who are not me and you, which is where you would be using these guys. I stands in for anything that is a converging preposition, although generally it's a. Instead of being plus people, and you have objects, concepts, and places. It doesn't have to be a, but most of the time it is. It's some sort of preposition that brings two things together. On top of, next to, beside, below, close to. En, on the other hand, is always indirect, but instead of using a, the way that everything else does, it uses de. I remember this because de has two letters and en has two letters. It can be plus, again, an object, a concept, or a place, but not people. So once you've picked, if it's in here, great, wonderful. It may also be in the rectangle. The rectangle is only ever for people. And the difference between the triangle people and the rectangle people is that you do have a preposition, so it's indirect, but it's not a, which is to say it's anything but that, like de, pour, avec, chez, à côté de, loin de, près de, etc. But it's got to be a person. The options here are moi, toi, soi, lui, and elle, as well as nous, vous, eux for masculine, and elle for feminine. These are called stress pronouns, okay, or accentuated pronouns. They will keep their preposition rather. You won't see this erased the way that the ones in the triangle erase. You're just replacing the person with one of these guys in the box. The ones in the triangle will move in front of your sentence or in front of your verb when you do that. So you'd have a verb here, subject here, and a verb here oftentimes, or it can be in front of the infinitive, whereas these guys will not move anywhere. Wherever they were originally is where they'll stay. So once you figure out what you're using, you want to put them into your sentence and put them not only in the right order. In the case of the triangle, you're going left to right if you have multiple ones. In the case of the rectangle, it's not really an order thing, it's really just where it is in the sentence. So if we look back at our thing here, you can pause the video and try to guess which are the things that are underlined. What would they be as pronouns if you like? All right, je réfléchis à ma conférence. I want to decide if it's direct or indirect. Do I have a preposition or not? I do have a, so this is indirect. Ma conférence, is it a person? No, it's a thing or a concept. So I've got a plus a thing or concept. That needs to become I. I'll put it before my verb because I only have one. Je plus y réfléchis. And stop there for a second. The next one, il veut du gâteau. Do I have direct or indirect? I have some form of de here, even though I know this is just an article, but I have some form of de here, which makes this automatically direct. De plus a thing becomes un. I have one verb, so I'll put it before the verb. Next, les oiseaux. Is it direct or indirect? Look at this first thing. Is that a preposition? No. So this is direct. Is oiseau a person? No. So it can't be me, te, nous, or vous. It's got to be le, la, les. In this case, les oiseaux will become les. Dans l'arbre, do I have direct or indirect, a preposition or not? Dans, it means inside of. That's a preposition. So this thing is indirect. I have dans plus the arbre. I have an indirect plus a thing, the tree. Dans means to go towards, right? It's a converging, it's inside. So therefore, I've got converging preposition plus a thing becomes I. Les and I, I'll have to decide which one goes first. They're both from the triangle. Les is further off to the left, so I'm going to put that one first. And I've got to figure out where do I put it. I've got two verb sounds, a little more complicated. Avoir plus vu, past participle. In the passé composé, your pronouns will go before your first verb. So I'll have les, zi, come on, et vu. Next one. Nous allons rendre visite à Simone. Let's see what we can do here. A is a preposition, so this is indirect. Simone is a person. This gets a little complicated because I have to now ask myself, is it the triangle or is it the rectangle? Triangle kind of looks like the letter A, if you can think of it that way. Sideways A, right? Like this. So if it's in the triangle, because it's indirect, it's got to have a for the person. Whereas this one, rectangle, would be from any other thing. So if I've got a and a person, I'm definitely in the triangle. Now Simone, is this first, second, or third person? She's third person. Singular. So a plus person, third person, that's going to become lui. Where am I going to put it? I got to count how many verbs I have. I have one verb, two verb, and a noun. This is aller plus an infinitive. So if I've got an infinitive, my pronoun is going to go before the infinitive. Lui goes right here. Finally, les clés, direct or indirect. This is not a preposition, so it's direct. Clé is not a person, it's a thing. So that lines me up with le aller. Again, this is les. I'll put it in my only first verb before my first verb, so I'm good. So once I put it in, then I have to worry about vowels and agreement. So let's do vowels first. Je plus I plus réfléchi. Here I've got a vowel problem, so I'll do my apostrophe there. Il en veut, and period. No vowel problems there. Je les y ai vus. I can't do anything about the two vowels here, so just leave it. Nous allons lui rendre visite. No vowel problems. Je les ai. No vowel problems. Okay, now in terms of agreement. Remember that agreement only ever happens on passé composé. This isn't passé composé. This isn't passé composé. This is passé composé, though. I've got avoir and I've got vu, so I know it's passé composé. I make agreement in passé composé with the subject when it's être, but I don't have être, I have avoir, or with the direct object pronoun when I have avoir. I have avoir and I have a direct object pronoun, les, standing in for les oiseaux, which is a masculine plural thing. So no S's, I'm sorry, no E's, but just an S. Je les y ai vus with an S. Nous allons lui rendre visite. This is not passé composé. Je les ai, not passé composé either. Okay, then the last thing I want to do is, of course, add in my ne pas. This is the only one that needs it. It goes directly after my subject and directly after my first verb. Je ne les ai pas. I don't have them. Je ne les ai pas. If I needed to put this in the other tenses, it would go here, 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 and after the first verb. Here, 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 and I've already done it here. All right, after that, y'all, it is just the lecture culturelle, so it is the end, and you've got your 5 extra verbs if you want to attempt those as well. Look at the key, and if you guys have any questions, do not hesitate to ask me. I hope this helps. I know it was pretty long, so thanks for sticking with it, and very, very best of luck, y'all. Bye.